January 12th, 1942. The bitter winter wind cuts across Detroit, Michigan, rattling factory windows and whistling down empty streets. Inside the massive Fisher Body Plant No. 1, the scent of oil, grease, and heated metal mixes with the sharp tang of welding sparks. Civilian auto workers, clad in thick overalls and steel-toed boots, move with purpose, their hands blackened from engines and chassis. Among them walks William Bill Thompson, a 34-year-old assembly line foreman, clipboard in hand, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "Everyone, listen up!" he calls over the roar of machinery, his voice barely audible against the hammering, grinding, and whirring of presses. "We're not making cars anymore. From this line forward, we're building Sherman tanks. They're counting on us in Europe, and we're not letting them down." The workers glance at each other with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Tanks, not cars. The transition from automotive production to armored fighting vehicles is monumental, but necessary. Thompson knows the stakes. Within weeks of Pearl Harbor, the United States has committed to an industrial war effort on a scale never before imagined. The factory, once humming with the production of Cadillacs and Chevrolets, is now a fortress of steel, transformed overnight into a hub of armored warfare. Inside the design office, engineers cluster around large drafting tables covered in blueprints of the M4 Sherman tank. The sketches are meticulous, showing modular turrets, interchangeable armor plates, and standardized components designed for rapid assembly. Lead engineer Margaret Ellis adjusts her glasses and points to a diagram. If we adopt a modular approach, one section can be built while another is being welded. Sub-assemblies can move down the line simultaneously. It'll cut production time in half. Her assistant, young engineer Harold Jenkins, nods eagerly. And if we standardize every part, we can use the same components across different models. No more delays waiting for custom pieces. Back on the factory floor, Thompson watches as massive steel hulls roll past on conveyor belts, guided by teams of welders and mechanics. The clang of metal on metal is constant, punctuated by the hiss of torches and the occasional whistle of a steam hammer. Workers have been retrained in a matter of weeks, learning to adapt automotive techniques to the production of tanks, each motion precise and synchronized. Overhead, American flags hang beside hastily affixed posters reading, "Arsenal of Democracy, every tank counts." The workers feel the weight of responsibility. They know that every Sherman rolling off the line is destined for the European front, where German panzer divisions await. The pressure is immense, but so is the determination. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, German intelligence begins to receive reports about American production capacities. Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Reinhardt pores over intercepted telegrams and factory reports in Berlin. "Detroit, automotive factories, producing armored vehicles," he mutters. "The Americans claim output, but can it be true? Our reports suggest a maximum of 500 tanks per month." His officers nod skeptically. The idea that civilian car factories could suddenly churn out hundreds of tanks each month seems implausible. Germany continues to underestimate the industrial adaptability of the United States. Back in Detroit, the first complete M4 Shermans roll off the assembly line in February 1942. Mechanics run final checks, rotating turrets, testing engines, and ensuring tracks align perfectly. Thompson inspects each tank personally, noting minor defects, but recognizing the immense accomplishment. "We did it," he says quietly, watching the hulking machines glide toward the staging yard. "We're building the future of the battlefield, right here." By March, production scales rapidly. Modular assembly lines allow multiple tanks to be built simultaneously, with sub-assemblies feeding directly into main lines. Workers operate with military precision, synchronized like clockwork. Welding teams, engine specialists, turret crews, and paint squads work in perfect coordination. Each Sherman is a testament to the fusion of engineering ingenuity and civilian dedication, a steel embodiment of America's industrial might. At night, Thompson walks alone through the factory, the clatter of machinery silenced, leaving only the scent of hot metal and oil. He pauses to examine a tank in progress, its turret lifted, tracks glinting in the dim light. "Germany won't know what hit them," he murmurs. They think they understand our capabilities, but they haven't seen this. Over in Berlin, Reinhardt's reports remain skeptical. 500 tanks per month. Impossible, he says again, shaking his head. Little do they know, the Americans are not only meeting those numbers, the production rate will soon surpass anything Germany has imagined. Detroit has become a crucible of mechanized warfare, turning civilians into the backbone of an unstoppable war machine. The Sherman, born from car factories and civilian ingenuity, begins its journey across the Atlantic. Each tank carries not just steel and machinery, but the hope and resolve of workers who transformed industry into a weapon. And as the first units arrive in England and North Africa, the Germans will be shocked to discover the sheer scale of American industrial power, a force they had gravely underestimated. March 18, 1942. The Detroit River glistens under the early spring sun as massive Liberty ships, loaded with M4 Sherman tanks, lumber toward the Atlantic. Dock workers, foremen, and soldiers coordinate in a choreographed frenzy, securing each tank on wooden cradles, chains rattling as they tighten over steel tracks and turrets. Bill Thompson stands at the edge of the pier, binoculars pressed to his eyes, watching the hulking machines move with deliberate precision. Each Sherman represents countless hours of sweat, ingenuity, and discipline, the culmination of a civilian workforce transformed into a war-fighting engine. Captain Robert Langley, a U.S. Army logistics officer, inspects the loading manifest. Hull 47 through 52, turret checked, engine secured, fuel topped. Any delay at sea risks operational setbacks on the European front, he calls, his voice barely audible above the roar of diesel engines. Dock workers exchange nods and gestures, moving with military-like synchronicity. The tank's journey across the Atlantic is perilous. German U-boats patrol the waters, eager to sink these industrial miracles before they can tip the balance in Europe. Below decks, sailors brace against the rolling ship. Each Sherman is meticulously lashed into place, the vibrations of engines and waves testing chains and braces. Thompson checks and rechecks each connection, aware that a single failure could mean the loss of multiple tanks. "Keep your eyes on the lines," he warns the crew. "Every tank we lose is one fewer for the boys on the front." Weeks later in Portsmouth, England, the first shipments arrive. Cranes lift Sherman tanks from the Liberty ships, depositing them on docks lined with Army engineers and infantry preparing for immediate deployment. British soldiers, initially skeptical of American-made tanks, circle the machines, inspecting welds, engines, and turrets. The robust construction, modular design, and reliability impress even the hardened veterans of North Africa. Meanwhile, across the English Channel, German intelligence reports begin arriving with disturbing frequency. Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Reinhardt pores over new intercepts. "They claim production numbers of over 1,000 per month," he mutters, flipping through the telegrams. "Our estimates were off by at least 300%. Detroit is producing more than we imagined, and they are shipping them safely across the Atlantic." Officers exchange worried glances. The scale of American industrial output, combined with logistical efficiency, shakes confidence at every level. Back in Detroit, assembly lines continue to churn relentlessly. Women, recently recruited from automotive and clerical positions, operate cranes, welders, and machine tools alongside men, accelerating production at unprecedented rates. Thompson walks through the factory, observing the synchronized chaos. Hull sections over here, turrets welded and painted over there, engines queued for installation. "If we keep this pace, we'll double monthly output in 2 months, he tells his foreman. On the European front, newly arrived Sherman tanks are assembled, fueled, and tested within hours. General George S. Patton inspects a row of gleaming green hulks, running his hand over the tracks. "These are fast, reliable, and mass-produced. Germany didn't anticipate this," he remarks, glancing at his aides. "Each Sherman that rolls out of the docks is more than a tank. It is a symbol of industrial power, morale, and strategic advantage." In Berlin, Reinhardt receives yet another report. U.S. factories are introducing modular assembly, standardizing parts, and retraining workers for maximum efficiency. This is a logistical revolution, he says, voice tight with disbelief. We believed their industry was slow, adaptable only in small increments. Now it is producing armor at rates that exceed even their own claims. Senior officers exchange grim nods, realizing that the Allies' tank production will soon outstrip Germany's capacity to destroy or counter them on the battlefield. Across the Atlantic, Thompson watches as yet another convoy of Shermans departs Detroit, a steel river of American resolve heading to fight across deserts, forests, and plains. Every tank represents the ingenuity of civilians turned industrial soldiers, each weld, engine, and turret a testament to what organized, focused labor can achieve in wartime. By mid-1942, the Germans are forced to acknowledge a hard truth. The American industrial machine is faster, more efficient, and more adaptable than intelligence had ever predicted. Sherman tanks are appearing in larger numbers than expected, reaching battlefields in North Africa and later Europe. What was once a skeptical eye from Berlin now becomes a calculation. The Allies' production capacity, powered by Detroit's factories, will decisively shape the outcome of mechanized warfare. July 15, 1942. The North African desert stretches endlessly under a scorching sun, its pale sands broken only by ridges and the occasional cluster of rocks. Major General Leslie McNair watches as columns of M4 Sherman tanks roll across the dunes, their engines churning up clouds of dust. The sound is thunderous, a rolling symphony of steel and horsepower, each tank a manifestation of American industrial ingenuity. Lieutenant James "Jimmy" Caldwell peers from the hatch of his Sherman, eyes scanning the horizon. Feels different from the training fields back in England, he mutters to his loader, Corporal Tom Jenkins. These things, they just keep coming. The desert trembles beneath the synchronized movement of hundreds of tanks. Crews communicate via radios, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible if production had been slower or if replacements had not been available in abundance. Across the battlefield, German officers stare in disbelief. Oberstleutnant Dieter Kruger, commanding a company of Panzer III and IVs near Tobruk, observes the advancing Shermans through binoculars. "How many are there?" he mutters, voice taut with tension. "We destroyed dozens yesterday, yet the numbers keep growing. They're factories. They're producing faster than we can destroy them." The desert sun glints off the olive-green hulls, a stark reminder that the Americans are not just replenishing losses, they are outproducing German expectations. The battle erupts with ferocious intensity. Sherman tanks engage Panzer units in close desert combat, firing high-velocity rounds across sand-swept ridges. Crews inside the Shermans maneuver with mechanical precision, trained on standardized controls and modular components that allow for rapid maintenance. When a tank is hit, the engine and turret can be replaced quickly in the field, a stark contrast to the slower, less flexible German counterparts. Back in Berlin, reports of the Sherman's combat performance land on the desks of Wehrmacht intelligence officers. Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Reinhardt reads aloud from a telegram intercepted by spies embedded in North Africa. Sherman tanks are appearing in numbers exceeding previous estimates. Standardized parts allow rapid repair. Crews are trained efficiently. Replacement tanks arrive faster than losses can be inflicted. Officers exchange uneasy glances. The initial assumption that American production would be slow, cumbersome, and limited has been shattered. On the front lines, Major McNair watches as two Shermans are hit by German shells. Within hours, both are repaired and returned to battle, their crews trained to swap out damaged components swiftly. "This is unlike anything we've faced before," he says, acknowledging the logistical mastery behind the machines. The sheer volume of tanks, combined with rapid repair cycles, frustrates German strategy. Where once a successful ambush could cripple armored strength, the Americans simply rotate in fresh Shermans, maintaining pressure relentlessly. In Detroit, Bill Thompson receives word of the Shermans' first engagements in North Africa. Workers gather around radios and newspapers, listening intently as dispatches describe the tanks performing flawlessly under desert conditions. "Every tank we build makes a difference," Thompson says, voice heavy with pride. Engineers and assembly line workers exchange glances, realizing that their civilian labor is directly shaping the battlefield thousands of miles away. German field reports continue to pour in, each more concerning than the last. Commander Heinrich von Luck notes in a dispatch, American tanks are arriving faster than our intelligence predicted. Supply lines sustain production. Replacements are numerous. The battlefield advantage is shifting. Officers in Berlin whisper of Detroit, of its factories and assembly lines, of the civilian workforce turned industrial army. The realization grows. American industrial capacity, once doubted, is now an unstoppable force influencing operational outcomes. By late summer 1942, the Sherman has proven itself not merely as a tank, but as a strategic lever of production. German commanders, who initially dismissed its significance, must recalibrate tactics in response to a battlefield where quantity, reliability, and speed of replacement matter as much as armor and firepower. The lessons of Detroit, modular design, assembly line efficiency, and civilian ingenuity mobilized for war, are on full display, reshaping the strategic landscape. Major Caldwell leans against the turret of his Sherman as dusk falls over the desert, engine idling, sand settling on the hull. They thought they could outmatch us, he says quietly, but we're coming faster than they can stop us. The roar of the engines echoes across the dunes, carrying with it the thunder of a new industrial war, one where the factories of Detroit determine the outcome as decisively as the skill of any soldier or the courage of any crew. August 3rd, 1942. Inside the sprawling Fisher Body Plant No. 1 in Detroit, the hum of machinery is deafening, a mechanical heartbeat of American industry. Sparks fly from welding torches, presses stamp steel plates in rhythmic precision, and conveyor belts carry partially assembled hulls toward the next station. Foremen, engineers, and workers move like a single organism, each action synchronized to maintain the relentless pace. Bill Thompson walks the line, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning every weld, every alignment. Hull 103, turret assembly, check torque on the breech mechanism. Hull 104, engine installation, verify tracks before moving to paint, he calls, his voice barely audible over the din. Every order is a matter of life and death thousands of miles away. Each tank is destined to face German panzers on the beaches of North Africa and beyond. Margaret Ellis, the lead engineer, oversees a team responsible for modular components. By standardizing turrets, engine mounts, and suspension systems, we can produce multiple units simultaneously, she instructs. A damaged tank can have its parts replaced in hours rather than days. Efficiency is our battlefield advantage before these machines even leave the factory. Her assistant, Harold Jenkins, nods, coordinating the flow of sub-assemblies from machine shops to assembly lines. The innovations are staggering. Where Germany relies on specialized factories with long production cycles, Detroit's civilian workforce has converted automobile assembly techniques into armored warfare production. Sub-assemblies, engines, turrets, tracks are prepared in parallel, then merged on the main line, cutting the time to full assembly in half. Workers who once built Cadillacs and Chevrolets now fabricate the backbone of mechanized victory. Outside the factory, the city hums with war effort activity. Rail yards are packed with flatbeds carrying newly completed Shermans to staging ports along the Atlantic. Dock workers, many of them women recruited into the industrial workforce, secure each tank, double-checking lashing points and fuel levels. Liberty ships are loaded day and night, crossing U-boat-infested waters to deliver steel to the European front. Each shipment is a gamble against enemy submarines, yet the flow never stops. Back in Berlin, intelligence officers struggle to reconcile reports from field units and reconnaissance flights. Klaus Reinhardt stares at production data, incredulous. They are building more than 1,000 tanks per month, possibly 2. How is this possible? Civilian factories, automobiles converted. The scale is unprecedented, he mutters, his voice tight with tension. Generals in the Wehrmacht whisper about Detroit in disbelief, realizing that their estimates of American production capacity were catastrophically low. On the factory floor, Thompson observes a worker operating a hydraulic press, shaping an armor plate for a Sherman hull. "Keep it tight! Every plate counts!" he shouts. Sparks fly, metal groans under immense pressure, and the plate slides onto the conveyor, ready to be welded into a tank that may soon face German forces in the desert. The combination of standardized production, modular parts, and highly trained civilian labor has created an industrial revolution, a factory as formidable a weapon as any tank it produces. In North Africa, newly arrived Shermans demonstrate the result of this industrial might. Crews swap damaged components in the field with ease, tanks return to combat within hours, and the relentless arrival of fresh units begins to overwhelm German logistics. The tactical advantage shifts not solely due to firepower, but because American production ensures that losses are replaced faster than Germany can destroy them. Lieutenant James Caldwell wipes sweat from his brow as he climbs out of a freshly delivered Sherman, observing its perfect alignment and functioning systems. "These things keep coming," he mutters. "It's not just the crew training or the battlefield tactics, it's the factory itself. Detroit is our secret weapon." His words echo the reality on both sides of the Atlantic. Production capacity, speed, and adaptability are now decisive elements of war. As the summer sun sets over Detroit, the factory lights blaze like a beacon, illuminating assembly lines where civilians toil with military precision. The roar of machinery, the hiss of welding torches, the rhythmic pounding of presses. It is a symphony of steel and determination. Each Sherman that rolls off the line carries with it not just armor and firepower, but the ingenuity, perseverance, and industrial genius of a nation fully mobilized for war. Across the Atlantic, German commanders can only watch and adapt as these tanks arrive on battlefields they once believed they could dominate. The lessons of Detroit, mass production, assembly line standardization, modular components, and civilian workforce adaptability, are now being felt in the sand of North Africa, the hedgerows of Normandy, and the forests of Europe. The war, they realize, is as much about industry as it is about soldiers and strategy. October 7th, 1942. The hedgerows of Normandy are dense, shadowed with autumn foliage, yet the rumble of approaching Sherman tanks pierces the stillness. Lieutenant James Caldwell peers through the periscope of his M4, dust and mud caking the hull as the column advances. "Keep tight formation," he calls to his crew. "We're counting on every Sherman making it through." Behind him, a convoy stretches for miles, a rolling testament to American industrial output and the relentless pace of Detroit's factories. On the German side, Major Otto Reinhardt, commander of a panzer battalion, spots the column from a ridge. His eyes widen. "Again? More of them?" he mutters under his breath, binoculars shaking in his hands. Days ago, he estimated he could counterattack using a combination of Panzer IVs and Tiger tanks, but the seemingly endless tide of Shermans has shattered that plan. They keep coming," he says, voice tight with disbelief. The German strategy of attrition, predicated on limited Allied supply, is failing before his eyes. The engagement begins. Shermans advance in coordinated formations, firing high-explosive rounds and using numerical superiority to isolate and overwhelm German positions. When a tank is damaged, American crews rapidly remove the turret, swap out components, and return it to the line. The modular production techniques of Detroit proving decisive under fire. Lieutenant Caldwell watches as a neighboring tank, hit by a panzer shell, is repaired by its crew in under 3 hours and rejoins the column. "That's our advantage," Caldwell mutters. "They can't keep up with us." Back in Berlin, intelligence reports flood in. Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Reinhardt reads aloud from a new dispatch. Sherman tanks arriving at European ports exceed prior estimates. Repairs in the field restore damaged units rapidly. Enemy armor cannot match replacement rates. Senior officers exchange worried glances. The initial German assumption that American production was slow and incapable of sustaining a protracted armored campaign has been decisively disproven. On the battlefield, the effect is immediate. German panzer units, once confident in their superior armor and tactics, are forced into defensive positions. Ambushes yield temporary gains, but every destroyed Sherman is replaced within days. The operational calculus has changed. Battlefield losses no longer yield the same strategic advantage. Oberstleutnant Dieter Kruger, observing the advancing column, shakes his head. We destroy 1, 2, 3, and yet more appear. They're factories. They are weapons themselves. In the Allied command tent, General George S. Patton studies maps littered with tank dispositions. Every Sherman built in Detroit becomes a soldier on the front, he says to his aides. Our strength isn't just in the men, it's in the production lines. The Germans underestimated how fast we can fight back after each loss. The emphasis is on momentum, not merely firepower. Speed of replacement, modular repair, and sheer quantity turn the Sherman into a force multiplier, overwhelming the tactical advantages of German armor. Back in Detroit, Bill Thompson walks the factory floor as yet another convoy of Shermans rolls off the line. Sparks from welding torches light the workers' determined faces. Every tank that leaves here is another one the Germans have to contend with, he says, voice steady. Engineers like Margaret Ellis oversee assembly lines, ensuring quality and standardization. Their innovations, once theoretical, are now shaping the outcomes of battles hundreds of miles away. As weeks pass, Sherman columns push deeper into Europe, rolling through North Africa, Sicily, and eventually the hedgerows of Normandy. German forces, facing attrition and the relentless tide of American production, are forced into strategic withdrawals. Supply lines are overstretched, panzer divisions immobilized, and command structures strained under pressure. The tide of the war, once balanced on German superiority in armor and tactics, begins to turn decisively in favor of the Allies. Lieutenant Caldwell leans against his tank at dusk, watching the horizon. Dust settles, engines idle, and the silhouette of Sherman tanks stretches as far as the eye can see. We keep building, we keep sending them, he says quietly. Detroit doesn't stop, and neither does the tide. Across the Atlantic, factories continue their relentless rhythm, welding, assembling, transporting, ensuring that the Sherman's presence on the battlefield is not a singular event, but an unbroken chain of industrial might. German commanders, once dismissive of American production capacity, now confront a stark reality. Detroit's factories, with their assembly lines, modular techniques, and civilian workforce, have become a weapon as decisive as any Sherman gun or armor plate. The tide of war has shifted. What was once underestimated is now unstoppable.